Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah, let's go.
A quick introduction. I'm sure Darren will maybe other quick introductions as well. But this is Darren and Kate. Darren, I met last summer when he rolled this particular piece of software out at ESSDACK conference in Denver, and I was completely blown away by it. And I continue to share it out. We haven't talked about it here, I don't think, ever before. Kate is a former middle school teacher.
High school history.
Okay, so Darren is the director, kind of like the head of the Learning Lab, and Kate is somebody who is with teaching experience and now works helping Smithsonian do this sort of stuff. So we have given them, I have asked them to basically take about an hour, maybe more, maybe less, depending on what they have to share and what kind of questions that you have. But then I want you to experience this particular tool literally from the people who helped put it together and continue to make it better. So Darren and Kate, thank you so much for being willing to share your expertise with us. The floor is yours. Everybody should be online at your website, and they all have microphones as well. So they should be able to just grab the microphone and share questions or comments as you feel needed. So we're good to go. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, so like he said, like we're gonna share this kind of tool here, but I'm gonna do a little bit of talking. Kate's gonna do a little bit of talking, and then we're gonna kind of dive in and really start using it. So I think we're excited to be there with you guys, and I think we'll try to keep the talking at you part pretty quick, and we'll sort of dive in. But please, if you've got laptops and things in front of you, jump right in. I'm gonna sort of share over. Kate, did you have anything before I sort of dive over to the slides?
No, I think let's get started.
Cool. So the URL is there, learninglab.si.edu. If you guys do want to jump on and kind of get going, we're going to have a formal time for that, but you can obviously jump in and kind of get things moving. So as Glenn said, I work at a place called the Center for, we both do actually work, I'm in Washington, Kate's in Pittsburgh. At an office at the Smithsonian called the Center for Learning and Digital Access. And the whole point of our existence here is to ensure that people who aren't coming into Washington or aren't coming to our museums have the opportunity to access and make use of all the material that the Smithsonian has. And part of that is being here with you guys today. So we're excited to do that and share with you this tool that hopefully will be really useful to you. So like I said, we're going to do a little bit of introduction, just a little walkthrough of what we've got, and then we're really just going to dive in and start doing this thing, start building some things out and showing you what's possible. And I think importantly, hearing back from you, your questions. So I think I heard Glenn said you all have microphones, so please interrupt us, stop us and ask questions whenever you've got them. So I think without further, we'll sort of jump in. So I'm assuming you all have heard of the Smithsonian, right? So you've seen the movie, maybe. Oftentimes outside of Washington, a lot of people think of the movie first, sort of as what the Smithsonian is. We like to think of this. This is if you've been to. I can sort of see you guys. Has everyone been to Washington? Show of hands. Oh, cool. So a lot of people have seen this. This is the Smithsonian Castle building on the National Mall, which is sort of the site of it, of where we are on the mall. But we're actually composed of a whole series of museums and research centers that are all over the globe. This photo here shows 8 of our museums here on the National Mall, where I am in Washington. You can sort of see that sort of donut-shaped building in the right center of the photo. That's the Hirshhorn Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art, and we're sort of in the building right behind that, where I am at least. Kate's at the Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so I work out of Pittsburgh, and I work with teachers in Pittsburgh who have been kind of experimenting with this site as it evolves and figuring out how to best use it in their classrooms.
Cool. So obviously the Smithsonian has a lot of really iconic objects, things that you might think of when you think of the Smithsonian, like the Hope Diamond. It's a 45-carat blue diamond, and I don't know if you guys might think more of the ruby slippers from the 1939 the Wizard of Oz. We have a lot of artwork, many of which document iconic figures in American history. We have works of contemporary art. We have artifacts that really document the really complex history of the United States. On the left is a winter count, which is a Lakota recording document. On the right is the really sort of iconic, amazing object, the lunch counter from Woolworths. We have a lot of objects associated with sort of 20th century American technology development. So the Wright Flyer on the left and the Space Shuttle Discovery there on the right. But really most of what we have looks like this, specimens. We have millions and millions and millions of specimens. On the left there are entomology collections. On the right are algae. These are both dry and wet collections. We have a lot of things in jars. So we're really this kind of really complex space of the Smithsonian. So we're actually 19 museums. We have 9 major research centers that are all over the world, really, with folks doing scientific research. Everything from people, we have an island in Panama where our researchers are doing work on coral reefs. We've got astrophysicists up in Harvard looking at finding planets around exostars. So all kinds of really kind of interesting stuff going on here. And a big part of what we have been trying to do is to try to figure out how how all of that can be useful in the classroom. And so we've just launched, Glenn was saying this past summer at ISTE, a new platform that gives you access to all these pieces that are now becoming available online because we're digitizing a lot of the collections. And so we're going to give you sort of a walk through what that platform is, which is called the Smithsonian Learning Lab. And Kate, I think, is going to take over here and sort of give you a kind of a walk through what this looks like. And like I said, you can really follow along if you're at learninglab.si.edu. What you're going to see for this part are really a lot of screenshots, and so you can definitely follow along as Kate takes us on a tour.
Yeah, absolutely. So so when you come to the homepage with Smithsonian, our tagline is Discover, Create, Share. And so we're going to start with the discovery piece, right? And this is really an opportunity for people to see what we have at the Smithsonian that you might want to use. And so we thought it's Black History Month. We'll choose something topical. And so we're going to start with this search bar in the top left corner, and we did a search for Rosa Parks. And so you can see that this pulls up our resources and our Learning Lab collections featuring Rosa Parks. And so we have 73 resources. And when I say resources, those can be, and you can see it right here, photographs, they can be video clips, they can be artifacts. You can see one of her dresses is in the Smithsonian's collection. They can also be what we call learning resources, which are typically websites or interactives that the Smithsonian has created already. And it's possible to go in and refine those searches down, say you only wanted to see the images that we had in our collection of Rosa Parks. And you can refine that search in a lot of different ways too. So if you're playing with this, you might see like, oh, you can see what we have from Rosa Parks in the American History Museum versus maybe what's in the African American History Museum. And you can also see some of those specimens that Darren mentioned. You get a lot of flowers that show up sometimes in an initial search, but that's okay. I'll also mention briefly here the collections, and we'll talk about those further. But so collections would be groupings of these items that people have put together. And so you can go over to that other tab and see what collections already exist featuring Rosa Parks. And kind of look at these groupings that teachers and other professionals have made. Okay. So when you click on one of these items, okay, there we go. You come to a screen that looks like this. And so you get a big, nice visual of whatever the item might be. And then you have these options down the left-hand side. So we can press on the info tab and get more information about what this piece is. Sometimes these write-ups are great and full of a lot of information like you might find on a museum label. Sometimes if they're the items don't come up with as much of a description, but you still should be able to find out where is this item from, what type of item is it, who made it, when was it made, some of those kinds of details. There's also some other buttons here that we'll talk about further, but they allow you to add to a collection. They allow you to favorite the item, so the heart icon lets you kind of save it for later, share it out over your favorite social media networks, and also your learning management systems, and then download the item if you want to use it later. So at this point in the Learning Lab, we have 1.84 million resources, and that number is growing all the time. It's grown since we started this project last year. And you can see that is a lot of images, a lot of text-based resources, audio, video, and then those learning resources that I mentioned. And already those have been put together to make over 8,000 collections of items. Yeah. Some of those are published and everyone can search for them, and some of those are still things that people are kind of working on in progress.
Yeah, I would interject just to say, the Smithsonian has more than 159 million objects. We don't know exactly how many we have because there's so many. And so we're working on two things. We're working on describing those objects, but we're also working on digitizing them. So, we've digitized about almost 2 million of these objects. And so digitization means, taking a picture of the thing, but also then creating those descriptions that Kate was talking about, that sort of information about what is this thing and why is it important and where did it come from and who's in the image or what text is in the image, sort of transcribing all of that. And so those digital records are becoming more complete as we grow more and more of those records.
All right, so the next piece of this gets to the creation part, and that's the really fun part, I think, for teachers and students alike. So you can take all of these individual resources that you found and put them together into collections, and then in those collections, you can add all sorts of things that make them useful for your classroom. So this here is an example of a collection I made focused on Black History Month. I did this with a middle school teacher that I was working with last year. And the emphasis here is on reading portraits, and so using different strategies to look at portraits. And so you can see in this collection, I already have a number of different kind of resources, right? We have our two-dimensional portraits, we have a 3D sculpture, we have a photograph, we have a text that I've entered in, and we'll talk about how to do that, and then also a file that I've uploaded of different strategies teachers can use. So this gives you an idea of the kinds of things that you might want to connect together. Most of these collections also will have this description part that give you an idea of how it might be used in the classroom, and they also come with some more information that will show you how to access later on, like what age level people imagine it for, what subject area, etc. All right, I think we can move on. Okay, so within the collection, so this is where you can see kind of the fun stuff that as a teacher you might want to add in. So in this portrait, I want students to be able to look at this collection and kind of know what they're doing. And so I've added in a little introductory piece, right? I want people to look at each of these portraits, to work on making very careful observations about what they see, and then draw some inferences. And so I've given some instructions on this text tab. And then as we move over, I've also added in some quiz questions. So these kinds of looking types of questions. And you could set this up so that students could answer those questions directly online. And using our roster and assignment function, you can view the answers that they've put in there. So this could be something that you assigned and students worked on totally independently, or it could be something that you're projecting up on the screen and discussing as a group. Another thing we wanted to show you is how you can use hotspots to highlight parts of your images. So what you can see right here are each of these kind of highlights of different areas of the paintings. And these come in different formats. They can be targets, they can be, they can have kind of reverse, so they're shading out different portions of the image. And actually, this might be a good place to go live. because when you hover over these hotspots as a teacher or a student, you can enter in additional information. So in this case, I've put in some extra questions that I want to use to direct folks' attention to it. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and show that. So I can show you guys now, actually, just doing that search for Black History Month, looking at collections. Can you guys see my screen?
You can't see your screen, Kate.
No.
No? Oh, okay, let me, oh, I forgot to hit the final button. Okay.
There we go.
Now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry guys. So I've done this search, I'm pulling up this collection, and I just wanted to show you those hotspots in action. So if I'm looking at this portrait of Booker T. Washington, I'm over here and say, oh, there's some hotspots that have been added. What I can then do is click on this box, and these questions that I've put in there come up. And so I find that to be a really useful way of maybe directing students' attention to different parts of an artifact or an image. Okay. And I can hop back in here. All right, so I'm going to share my PowerPoint screen now. Sorry, one second. The last piece of this then is, how do you share this work, right? How you've created this collection, how are you actually going to use it? You can share it just how you would share it. Notice those buttons that are on there. You can take a link and you can share it out over Twitter, Facebook. We actually have an embed code. You can embed it into a course website. You can also use Google Classroom. But then there's the sort of more thinking piece, and the stuff we want to talk about today is how might you share it with your students? How are you going to use this site in the classroom? And that's what I think is so interesting about this tool, is that it can be used in so many different ways. So we can talk about student-centered versus teacher-centered. So you can create something and students can work individually on their devices or in small groups on devices. You can set up a station activity around your room where one of the stations is using the Learning Lab. You can print out materials from the collection that they can then use, you know, kind of kinesthetically arranging items or creating timelines from those items. Or this can be something where, say you just really want to dig into an image or an idea with students. You can project it up on the screen for a group discussion. You can take collections and use them to maybe supplement lectures or readings, right? Creating images to illustrate what's going on. An example here, if you want to see some things that other teachers are doing, as we mentioned before, you can search for collections. So just using that same search bar at the top of the screen, you can then, okay, trying to get my mouse. Okay, up at the top of the screen, you can search for something. You click on that collections tab, and it shows you what other people have made. And so you can go ahead and look at these and see some different ways that people are using civil rights or dealing with civil rights in collections. And you can take these collections and adapt them for your own use. Some examples here. This is one a colleague of mine, Tess, made that really just focuses on that one Rosa Parks sculpture and digs in deep using the claim support question model, which is one of the visible thinking strategies from Harvard's Project Zero. There are others on here. This is one I've made on the March on Washington, and it's much more sort of narrative, taking students through a video about the March of Washington and then exploring some primary source documents, something where they can come away with some content on that event. Okay. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting to my next slide. Okay, there we go. So here's just some images for you. Those are students in a classroom, again, kind of working pretty independently in small groups with a collection on African masks. And this brings us to this sort of other idea, which is that the Learning Lab can be used in ways that are very exploratory or more focused. So you can set up an assignment with the Learning Lab where students are building their own collections, right? Where you're asking them to consider a topic or a question and finding images and artifacts that support that. We've worked with teachers who have kind of echoed the DBQs that are used in a lot of AP classes and had students create those DBQs. So coming up with an inquiry question and the kinds of sources that might be used. Curating museum exhibits, or just using materials from the Learning Lab in some of those creative projects that you might already be using in your classroom, like having students make a magazine layout, right? Or creating a timeline or video. Or these can be very focused. Like I mentioned, my March on Washington collection, it's really getting content across about the March on Washington. It's a collection that's leading students through that. The quiz questions can allow you to assess learning along the way, and you can track what students are doing as they use those materials. All right, so this is an example of a video that was made using materials from the Learning Lab. This was a middle school teacher who asked his students to create a movie trailer for John Brown, which I'm surprised there hasn't been a movie about John Brown yet, because I think it's a really great idea. So I'll just show you a little bit of this. I think hopefully it'll.
Okay, that's just a screenshot, so I think it's going to open up.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it may have opened in your browser, but it might not be showing it. Yeah.
It has, yeah. Here we go. All right, I'll stop it there, but you get the idea, right? So they've taken these images and tried to kind of put them together, creating a little bit of the narrative of the John Brown story. I thought that was a very creative use of some of our materials. Another kind of more exploratory or open-ended assignment is an assignment a teacher did where they asked students to find an image or a work of art using Andrew Jackson. And in this case, they've created a collection that students could choose from, or they could just search on their own. And then students had to take that image, copy it into their own collection, and add on hotspots that explained why is this image a good choice for an Andrew Jackson campaign poster. You know, what are the details in it that could really be persuasive in that sense. And this was a really neat activity. I watched students doing it, and what happened was you started to see students using, you know, really looking closely at an image and then doing all kinds of outside research to find out, you know, what does a horse normally symbolize when it's on a, you know, in a portrait? You know, why do they, why is he holding a cane, right? And kind of following their curiosity in order to come up with their persuasive statements about Andrew Jackson. So again, a more maybe exploratory way of using the Learning Lab. All right, so I think it's time for you guys to try some things. So you have already made an account, is that right? Has everybody there made an account in the Learning Lab? Yep. Yes. Okay, if you haven't yet, I would suggest that you go ahead and sign on. It's a very quick process, just takes your email address. And having an account lets you to do some of the more creative stuff. So anybody can go on and search, but it allows you to favorite resources, copy and adapt collections, make your own collections. So to really get your full use of the site.
Kate or Darren, I think we've talked about this, or maybe with Darren, I talked about before with student accounts. We do have middle school teachers who are maybe having 6th and 7th grade kids under the age of 13. Problems with that, or workarounds, or what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah. So we do obviously, for kids who are 12 and younger, can definitely have accounts. They do need to have so they do need to have a parental permission via email. And so when they sign up, they're asked to put in a parental email, and the parent will get an email, which they'll need to just click to confirm that. They have a slightly different experience though. They can still search and build collections. They can't publish those collections for others to see them. They can't upload content. So like the collections that Kate was sharing, you can search the Smithsonian and build a collection, but you can, regular users, adult users, you guys in the room there, can upload images or files from your computer, things you might be using outside of the sort of Smithsonian space. So the kids 12 and younger can't do that. So they have a limited experience. They can't really sort of publish anything out directly, but they can definitely have accounts. And they can do most things, and we can give some more specific examples. I think once we get in a little deeper, if we've got folks with sort of mixed classrooms.
So we'll go ahead now, and I'm going to share those instructions again. What we'd like you to do is to create that account if you haven't yet, and then to search for the collection that I just showed you. So that Black History Month collection. You'll want to make sure that you move over to the Learning Lab Collections tab, because if you just search Black History Month, you're going to get all of those individual resources. We want you to look for the collections. Find the Practice Reading Portraits one. This is the one with the Muhammad Ali portrait on it. And then click Copy. And what you're doing by doing that is you're making a copy of that collection, and that's your own now. And you can edit it, do anything you want to it. But what we want you to do is to practice adding a resource. So once you get into that collection, you've made it your own, you're going to want to hit Edit, and then Add a Resource. And you'll see a screen that comes up, and it gives you some options to search, to upload a resource. So as Darren was saying, you guys can pull in your own images or images from other websites. But we want you to find maybe something that you would add to this collection of portraits. And just take some time to play around with that and see what you can do. Darren, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, this is the fun part to really sort of jump in. This is, we usually kind of start this way with having you make a copy of someone else's collection, because it's sometimes a little bit easier to wrap your head around what's possible with just going in and sort of messing around with somebody else's collection. So like Kate said, once you've copied that collection over, that collection is yours now. So it doesn't impact hers. It doesn't impact, the Smithsonian's version of anything. It's really just in your account now, and you have the ability to go in and really, really do what you want to it. So you can delete out resources that Kate's added into her version. You can, like we're going to ask you to do here, is to find something new that might make sense within that collection.
So take a few minutes, play with that. If you have questions, I guess this is where the tricky part of doing a webinar comes in, but maybe Glenn, you can help facilitate that if people are running into stumbling blocks.
Copy icon next to the heart.
Yes. Yes. No, no, it's exactly. I think once you have the collection, you can share that.
We're looking at videos to add to our collection, and we want to view the video before we add it. How do we do that?
So when you're adding something from that kind of edit collection mode, it can be hard to kind of, get the full effect of some of the resources. My suggestion would be to open up another tab, go to the Learning Lab in that tab and just search from that first search bar, and that'll let you watch videos. You can see it big, zoom in and out. It gives you kind of more options.
Yeah, another option would be just to add it, because you're in that sort of thing where you can select and add a bunch of things at once. You could add them in, and then once you get back into the regular sort of edit collection window where you see the other pieces of your collection, you can then open things up and you can watch the videos. And then if it doesn't work, you can really easily just delete it back out of your collection.
All right.
I usually find when I'm building collections, I often add a lot more in and then sort of go back and sort of scale it back. I usually dump a bunch of things in and then I'm like, well, this is way too many. I really only need one of these, and I sort of delete out. So I usually put more in than I need.
Yeah.
Yeah, Darren and Kate, you've lost them because now they're all like finding cool stuff.
Good.
That's good. That's what we want.
Yeah.
So definitely interrupt when you're ready to move on, because they could be here a while.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we built in a few minutes here really in what we were talking about, just to let this exactly happen, what's happening now. And we're going to come back and sort of show you a few more examples and sort of ask you to go do a couple a little bit more complicated things, and we'll show you those. But this is definitely the time just to play around. And ask questions. We're definitely here if you've got questions.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Darren, here's your first suggestion for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we haven't found it, but we just were like, hey, if I misspell something, it won't make suggestions like Google does.
Yep.
Probably not the first ones to suggest that, but they just said kids never spell wrong. It's just the adults. But
that is not true. But yeah, we have that. We have that under development right now. Thank you though for adding some more emphasis to that, because I agree. I mean, I'm a terrible speller, and kids. I think adults and kids who have a little bit more experience doing online research are a bit more aware of that. But we often see with kids, especially if they misspell something and they get 0 search results back, they never assume they misspelled it. They just sort of assume that there aren't any results. And so we've been working on that.
Well, we were doing a search for, one of the teachers was doing a search for Frederick Douglass and found multiple results based on different spellings actually. So, which is also something we can train our kids to do. But yeah, I'm definitely used to the idea, like if I spell something wrong, Google's going to help me out. So I was trying to find Tuskegee Airmen and I spelled it wrong, and I figured there was something in there. I just needed to start from scratch.
Yeah.
I think it is a good way to practice search skills with students though, because it doesn't kind of provide all the answers in a way that Google does. Sometimes you do have to brainstorm out different terms to use, and check your spelling. Sometimes you'll find some things that the curators have spelled wrong, and then you get different results. So.
And that's a good thing, I think, to remind everyone too, is they're sort of searching as you're looking at individual resources there. And you saw in the example with that Rosa Parks photograph, when we opened up that info panel, and that what we call metadata, all that descriptive information that's on the left. I mean, that information has been written starting in the 1840s through to, to yesterday by curators and scientists and researchers who until very recently never imagined that what they were writing would ever be seen by anyone. These were oftentimes the object record that were just written to help future scientists or curators understand what might be in a box. And so oftentimes it's pretty skeletal, or there's spelling mistakes, or there's sort of issues with it. And so as you begin to explore more in Learning Lab, you'll find a big diversity of quality in terms of those resources. And the museums, of course, are working on improving that and making those a lot more useful. But there's millions of things, so it's a slow process.
Well, maybe we should move on and show them some new things to do, or what do you think?
How's the room, Glenn?
There's a lot of buzz, so you're gonna have to grab their attention. No, it's all right. That's what we want. So I don't know what your schedule is, but we can definitely move on because we're gonna give them some time to play with this when we sign off with you guys.
Okay.
Okay. So so you've had an opportunity to kind of copy this collection and maybe add some things to it and make it your own. Does anybody want to share any feedback on what they added, or any challenges they faced doing that? Anything interesting they found?
Some of the topics that we thought might be in there. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
Mm-mm.
Just keep talking. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I can hear you now.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things we thought might be in there weren't necessarily there. Like exodusters here in Kansas, that's quite a popular topic, and we kind of searched that and Benjamin Singleton and didn't come up with any search results, and kind of expected maybe there to be some. Is it just still in progress and more stuff continually being added? Or
Definitely. So, I mean, there's two things going on. One is that either the Smithsonian doesn't have anything about that, which is probably not the case. But like you said, there's 1.8 million individual resources in here today. By the end of next month, there'll probably be 2 million resources. So we're always digitizing and adding more of the collections into Learning Lab. So there's just a small, there's 1% of the entire Smithsonian collection is there right now. But that's being added to. Doesn't necessarily guarantee the Smithsonian has something about everything. There are lots of holes in the museums and the collections, but it's probably just the case we just don't have it digital yet.
do you have any way of getting some kind of message board or anything where teachers could say, hey, I'm looking for resources on exodusters. Do you have any suggestions for me or anything along those lines?
Yeah, so if you look in the lower right-hand corner of your window, not in our shared window, but on your own computer there's that little white feedback button. If you click that, those messages come right actually to me and to the team here in Washington. And so if you have things like that, either with the tools or with the content you're liking or not finding, put that in there, and that feeds right into how we do that. And if there is something, we'll certainly point you in the right direction and give you some more information, but it's always helpful to get that to us because it's one of the things that feed into how we make decisions about what to digitize.
Excellent, thank you.
The other thing I might point out is that I find as a history teacher that the way I, organized my units and the way, my lessons and labeled them, right? Like, so I might call something the Gilded Age or Closing the Frontier. Those are not necessarily the same labels that the museums are using. So sometimes it's possible that instead of searching exodusters, that maybe doing some searches just around Kansas African Americans, things like that, you might start to find some things that just aren't labeled in that same way. And I recognize that that's a challenge, but it's something to consider if you're not finding what you want right away. The other piece is that we do have that ability to add in resources. So if there are great primary sources, that are local to your state or your place, I would absolutely upload them and add them to a collection. Any other feedback? Okay. Well, we can show you some other stuff. So I wanted to kind of show you this hotspot tool and encourage you to play around with it. And so I'm going to go live again to the Learning Lab because it's a bit easier to show you that way. So okay, so I'm in my collection now, and I'm going to go to a different resource. Let's pick maybe this picture of Serena Williams. And I'm going to click on Edit Resource. If you're already in edit mode, you won't have to do that step. But so I want to edit this, and this is where you'll go to this Customize Your Resource button. And you can you have an option of 3 different things that you can add here. So you can add in info or text. So that kind of introductory piece that I showed you the first time, it's real simple. You just click, type, and then you can add in links, you can make it bold, you can do whatever you need to do there. So that's one option. The other option is that you can add in quiz questions. And I think I mentioned this before, there's a variety of types of questions that you can include. So we've got true, false, multiple choice, short answer, long answer, submit file, which really gives students an opportunity to upload their own Word doc or PowerPoint or whatever it might be, or even a link. And so this is pretty intuitive, I think. You just hit add question, you write in what the question might be. If it is multiple choice, you'll put your answers down there, but you don't necessarily have to fill this part in, and then it will save and be there for students to look at and use. The last option are the image hotspots. You can add a little description in here. Sometimes I find that it's helpful to say, like, these hotspots will help you, focus on what's important. And then you pick what kind you like. I showed you the highlights. I'm going to show you the targets now. And then you just click on wherever on the dot you want it to go. So I think what's really, interesting about this portrait is that her gaze, right, looking off into the distance. So I can add in a target, and I can say, eyes, and I can say, why do you think she is looking into the distance? Or what do you think she is thinking about, right? I can add in kind of whatever kind of question I like and hit check. And I can continue to do that. I can put as many as I want on this one page. Okay. So that's kind of showing you how you might add in those things. You can delete them as well. When you're in this edit mode, you also have the opportunity to move stuff around in your collection. So you may have noticed that already. When you hit add resource, you can also add in a standalone tool. So some of those freestanding info pages, quiz questions, or we haven't even talked about the sorting activity, but you can play with that if you like. That's Smithsonian Learning Lab 2.0. But you're welcome to play with it. So there's a lot of different possibilities for you. And I think, yeah, okay. The little video screen was hiding the button I needed. So again, you can write some standalone text and save that. So what we'd like to ask you to do now is to continue to play with that and kind of take it up a notch. So beyond just adding in a resource, maybe try hotspots or some of these standalone tools and see what that feels like. And again, as you're, if you hit a stumbling block or you have a question, please let us know.
This is Glenn. I'm just curious when has that standalone feature always been there? Or is that new? You said it was 2.0, but is the sorting new or is the standalone new?
The sorting is new, is fairly new. The standalone tool has been there from the beginning, I think, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Just not paying attention, I guess.
That's okay. Something I didn't mention earlier, but if there's a little blue checkbox to check after you've entered some text, do that because that helps save your work.
He caused a problem by
Are we going to talk about adding rosters and classes later on?
We can. Sure.
Because I think that's where we're interested in that aspect of how do you create a class, add a class, and see what.
Okay. Yeah. Are you guys ready to jump into that now, or?
I'm supposed to ask if it marries with Google Classroom.
Darren.
So we're working on a deep integration with Google Classroom. Right now, you can, using the share button, you can share out resources or whole collections out to Google Classroom. So it's linked in the way that you can share something to Facebook or Twitter. It's not connecting with your rosters and user accounts in Google Classroom right now, but we are working on that.
Cool.
So I can go ahead and show you this idea of creating a roster and assignments. You would go up to the sunburst, and that sunburst is really like your key to everything in terms of your account. And there's a rosters function. Once you click on that, it shows you the rosters that you already have made. And so these are my teaching ones. These are ones that I've created. And then there's also learning ones, which are ones that I am a part of. And then to make a new one, you would just hit the plus sign. And so you can go ahead, put in the name of your roster. a little detail about it. You have this option about who can join, whether you want to leave it completely open so anybody with the link can join. If you want to add in a password to have sort of an extra layer of security, you can do that. And then you just save the roster. And what that essentially does is it creates a link that you then share with your students in whatever way that works best. So rather than going in and typing in all your students' names, you share this link out via Google Classroom or Remind or whatever you might use. They click on that, they enter a password if you've asked them to, and then you would start to see a list of learners down here, right? So if I sent that link out to you guys, you would follow it and you would start to show up in my learners list. If I go back to my rosters, I can show you what this looks like. Here's my go-to practice set. So I have 3 learners on this set, right? And I have assigned 3 different assignments to them. When I look at an assignment, I can see the link to that collection. And then I can see, you know, who started the assignment. Linda hasn't even started it yet. And if you scroll over, you can see, okay, these people are in progress, and I can see, you know, what exactly they're getting done. That's what you're able to see once you created that roster and the assignment. To add on an assignment is pretty easy. You would actually go to your collection. So say I went back to that Black History Month collection. It's this folder button right here. It says assignments. You would say create assignment. And then
I would interject too that, you know, it doesn't have to be one of your collections to assign. If you find someone else's collection in the search and it's great and you want to use it as is, that assign button appears on every collection. So you can assign another collection that's not necessarily one that you made or have edited to. So, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's great.
And I'm going to go ahead. This is Glenn.
And so, yeah, this is, yeah.
So I was just curious, Darren, you said we could use any collection to make an assignment. So I don't have to copy the collection and put it into my account to create an assignment?
You don't have to. It, and in a sense, sort of does that once you've opted to do that, but you don't need to do it first.
Cool. Thanks.
And then you guys can see this is pretty self-explanatory here. You can pop in a due date if you want, and that'll close it out at a certain point. And then you just click which rosters I want. So maybe I want to do it for my first and my second period, right? And then it will show up for those students. Any student that's on those rosters, it's going to show up on their assignments, right? So when they log in and they go to assignments, that assignment will then show up for them. So it's definitely something to play with. I find the most important thing I can tell you is to have your students make their log in and sign up first before they try to get on a roster. Sometimes I run into some struggles in the classroom because that part hasn't happened yet. And then they try to do a roster link and then they tell me it's not working and things like that. So just try to get your students logged on, then shoot them the roster link. And once they're on that roster, they're good. They'll always be on that roster. Any other questions about different features of the lab?
Yeah, I think the only thing left we had in our slides was just to show the collection metadata and sort of where that is and kind of what's possible. If you want to jump into one of yours and show that.
Darren,
yeah, so, oh wow, I can see I have 24 copies of this collection. On every collection, there's this info button, and it shows you the collection information. And so this again shows the subjects that the person has designated it for, age levels, educational features, and descriptions. And you can create this for your collections that you're using. It's really easy to do. Just when you're in that edit mode, you click on edit info, and now you have the opportunity to change the title, change some of the warm up. You could go in and say, well, really, I want to use this with my, younger kids, not my older kids, and change that out. And so we recognize that you won't always have the time to do all of this, but any data that you do add to it, it helps people later on when they're searching to find your collections and to find collections that might be useful for them. So for example, if I'm going to do a search for, let's say the environment, I want to see what's out there, about the environment that I could teach about. And I click on Learning Lab collections. I can then refine that search. Whoops. And see, okay, I want collections that look at the environment, but definitely just from a science perspective. And that will limit my search results to collections that have been tagged as science collections. So it can be sort of useful in that way. I'll also say, I feel like I encounter teachers sometimes who say, like, is it bad that I'm just copying your collection and, changing 2 things or not changing it at all? And the answer is like utterly and completely no. Like, we want you to do that. Part of the Learning Lab is kind of creating this community of users who are building off of each other's work, who recognize that other teachers are talented and, want to see what they do. And it can be really inspiring to see different ways that people are using these collections and these materials. I'm curious, do you guys off the top of your head, or after this introduction, do you have ideas about how you might use the Learning Lab in your classrooms? I'm going to stop sharing my screen, I think. So I guess I'm asking if there's any feedback or any ideas about how you might use the Learning Lab in your classrooms.
I like how you can take the resources that you guys have, but then also upload what I've already created, so I can enhance lessons that I already have by then adding a highlighter tool on the images and being able to ask the kids quiz questions or those kinds of things right there in the assignment, while still being able to add what I already have to it. So I kind of see it as a combination of using what you have and using what I have to blend it.
Yeah.
I can see using it as like a check for understanding, rather, just to see after a unit's over, and seeing, okay, you need to create this collection of information, having them create their own, rather than us creating it.
Yeah, I've had a teacher just the other day tell me that she will have them, for whatever the essential question might be that they've been tackling in a unit or set of lessons, she'll just have them now go and search for a source in the Learning Lab that helps them answer that question in some way. And then they use that, they all kind of share their sources and talk about it. And I think it's a really neat way to see what they've learned.
Kate, I was just curious, in the info button for the different artifacts or the different pieces, I can click on the original, like, I don't know what you call it, but there's a link that takes me back to where you guys found it. So like the Rosa Parks takes me back to the National Portrait Gallery. I'm just curious now, I'm starting to think, can I use that little link? Okay, I want more Rosa Parks stuff. And like we were saying, there's no Exoduster things, but maybe if I click that link and takes me back to another museum outside of the Learning Lab, does that give me access to those collections, or everything that's in the Learning Lab has already been taken from these other places? Is that, I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, but if everything from the National Portrait Gallery has already been digitized and put in the Learning Lab, is there any reason ever to go back to the National Portrait Gallery because there's stuff there that you haven't put online yet?
So there is. So what's in the Learning Lab is an aggregation of all of the digital files, I would say. So if you're looking for other portraits of Rosa Parks, all the portraits are here. If you're looking for an online exhibition or a lesson plan or a research database or something that's not something that's like an object in the museum, you may find those things off on the other sort of websites. And so the information about that portrait of Rosa Parks and that portrait, as well as the other portraits, are all here. All the sort of museum collection pieces are here. But all the other kinds of stuff that museums do online, these other sort of data sets and other online sort of pieces, other lesson plans, things may not necessarily be on Learning Lab. But all the videos, all the images, the blog posts, the Smithsonian Magazine articles, all that stuff is aggregated here. So it's possible you'd find something else out there, but most things are here.
Cool.
And that info tab, though, can be a good way to find other materials in the Learning Lab. Sometimes the there are some words that pop up in blue, some of the metadata, and that can take you, it's sort of like the old school card catalogs, right? And you could see like, oh, this is how they're coding this resource. Let me look at all the other things that are coded in this way. So that info tab can help you find other things in the Learning Lab sometimes.
I was also curious about if I upload, Jill was talking about uploading her own stuff. Is there a limit to how much I can upload, or is it goes into my account, or is it just uploaded to some double secret probation Smithsonian server and I can put as much as I want?
You can upload as much as you want. There's a 15 megabyte file size limit. So you can upload images and a few sort of data files. So you can upload a PowerPoint or a PDF file or a Word document. You cannot upload movies. However, you can add a resource into a collection using a YouTube or a Vimeo URL, and the video will play right within Learning Lab. So you don't even need to upload it if you've already got it in one of those other places. And when you upload something, it stays, in a sense, within the context of your collection. And so if you add an image, it's not going to show up in the search results with the other 1.8 million things. It stays within your collection. So you're not adding into the giant pool of things. You're just adding it into the collection.
Cool. I'm going to ask them real quick to talk at their table about other questions they might have, because they're a very shy group. They're not, but I'm going to ask them very quickly to do like a minute reflection at their table that might generate some questions or thoughts, if that's okay with you. So very quickly, you guys talk. Some of you decide about talking questions.
I was thinking kind of going into U.S. history. There's some stuff on create a collection. Figure out how they're all connected. That's pretty easy.
You know, one of the things I've found out is that I created this thing. I don't know how to explain how I teach a bigger scope world history. So I teach U.S. history and world history. And so I made a Prezi for World War I. I think it was world history, and I didn't feel like I was teaching U.S. history. You know, the section, and we're doing it now on like a year-old.
All right, I'm gonna ask you. We're gonna continue to have a reflection time when we sign off with Darren. I promised them an hour of their time. Right up to that hour. If you have at your table a question or an observation that you need to make before we let them go, now would be the time. Question from your table or observation from your table.
So yeah, some things are.
Give me a thumbs up, a sideways thumb, or a thumbs down if this is something that you could use in your class. All right, so what we're going to talk about is how could we do it, and how could we, what are some concerns that we need to overcome if you're sideways and you're kind of like wavering, that feedback button is where you should go. Because I've heard some concerns, and Darren and I want to have some conversation, maybe Kate and I will have some conversation, but that feedback button, I think, is a powerful piece that we need to take advantage of, because
I talked with Daryl last week, and one of the things he said was, we're trying to, and even Kate said, Learning Lab 2.0. This is always an updating process, a changing, getting better process. So that feedback button is really important, and we need to take advantage of that. Last chance, Darren and Kate, I'm going to give them one last chance to ask questions or make some sort of observation before we let you guys go. And I'm going to give you a chance to maybe wrap things up as well before we let you go. Anything from our end? Questions? Okay, we have a question. I think yours is still beeping red, so I'm going to give you this. Okay, she got it.
Okay, so Kate, I'm looking at some of the ones that you've created, and like the atomic bomb one, the what do you think, dropping the A-bombs to end World War II. And it says it takes 1 to 2 hours. Have you tried, like, did you try that with kids? Does it really only take 1 to 2 hours? Because I noticed there was a lot of sources.
No, so I just normally put in the like less than 1 and 1 to 2 hours as options, as sort of possibilities. So that's actually a lesson I have seen used within a 45-minute period. The teacher used it, and she didn't do all of she didn't use every resource in there, but she used pieces of it. As someone right now, I'm not in the class. I'm in other teacher classrooms. I don't have my own classroom right now. So I try to make stuff that I hope can be kind of flexible and adapted for specific uses. So you could probably do it in less time, probably do it in more.
Would you recommend like this just taking like 1 45-minute class, or do you think it should be something that we should extend into like multiple class periods?
I think that depends sort of on your curriculum and your kids. If you have, I mean, that's a huge topic, right? This discussion of dropping the atomic bomb. If you have the time to dig into some of to really dig deep into that, then go ahead and play with those resources and stretch it out. But I certainly think it's something that can be done. It worked well in the 45 minutes that I saw. Any other questions?
I think we know enough to be dangerous and to spend some more time playing with this when we're gone. But, last thoughts or observations or suggestions from you and Darren.
I would just say, as you just said, that feedback button is really important to me. This is a project that we've been working on for a couple of years, but it's really unfinished. We're really, in the process now of kind of reflecting on what we built and trying to figure out how we should continue to change this so that it has more useful tools, it has a better interface, all the kinds of things that this can evolve to. So the way that we're doing that is by talking to groups like this and encouraging you to click that feedback button. So please, as you later today, or as you go back home or next week when you come back to this and are taking a look at it, if something occurs to you, we really need to hear from you. So I'd hope that you would take that to heart and send me a message.
And I'll throw out there from a teaching perspective, I would really encourage you to allow your students to play with it as well. It's kind of a safe space for them to explore. So maybe, create 1 or 2 collections to use with them, but it's really powerful when you give them the chance to create collections too and let them kind of follow their curiosity and see what's out there. So I would encourage you to try that side of it out too. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Darren and Kate, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we've been sitting for a while, so get up.